Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised. In our society, most people are content to go through their daily lives safely and peacefully. But our society is not always safe or peaceful. For that reason, some men and women answer a higher calling to defend and protect their fellow man. You probably know someone who is one of these people, or maybe you are one of these people. The ones who see and do the things most people would never want to. These things are sometimes heroic and beautiful, but often they are horrific and terrifying. It's these things they don't share about with other people. It's these things they carry with them, so you don't have to. But when they get together, they talk to each other about them. And they call these stories war stories.
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Tom.
And I'm Chuck.
And Chuck, it's you're still at home with the vid, aren't you?
Yeah, dude.
You got which one you got? Optimus Prime, Megatron, Starscream?
Which I swear to God, I've got the Flurona, dude. It's fucking crazy. So my kids, we all have it, baby included. Everybody, every swinging dick in the house and not has it. So our little girl has it, who's a little girl. She's like 18, 19 months. She's got it. So we got infected like 7 days ago, and then the kids got it. Kids are fine. The kids just have a cough now. They're cool. But still popping positive. And then today, so yesterday we lost taste and smell. And we're like, dude, this is 5 days, 6 days after the initial infection. What the fuck is going on? Because we ran through fevers, we ran through body aches, chills. That went away.
My sense of smell. My sense of smell didn't disappear until a week in.
Yeah, and then next thing I know, no sense of smell and taste. And I thought it was funny. I was like, nah, it's bullshit. So I walked outside with my classic cars, and I don't smell it. And I'm like, that thing has a distinct smell. I'm like, oh fuck, let me go eat some shit. And so I'm eating it. I have all the textures, and I can taste if it's acidic-y, but I can't taste any of the food. I'm like, well, this is cool. I'm drinking whiskey, and then the whiskey, I'm like, normally it goes.
That's not good. Typically what they prescribe for COVID, by the way.
Well, I mean, promethazine whiskey and a Z-Pack. I got a Z-Pack today because I called the doctor. I was like, look, dude, it's 7 days, man. I still feel like shit. Everyone else feeling better except for me, my wife, and the little one. The two older kids, they're fine. They're fine.
It's a lesser known Scottish whiskey called Glenvermectin. Anyway.
So,
well, this week I'm happy that we've got a guest who dips his foot into both the veteran world and the police world and kind of functioned in both worlds in very similar ways. Nate, how are you? Welcome.
I'm doing. Thanks, man. A pleasure being on. Thank you for having me. Doing really good.
You're welcome.
Oh no, yeah, we're happy to have you. So you, if my understanding is correct, you were in the military as a police officer, and now you are in fact a civilian police officer, which is something we get asked about a lot. So why don't you tell us about how you ended up going into the military and then eventually becoming a civilian police officer?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I did explorers in my hometown. So like little kid, I want to be a cop. So I went in the military to get the experience. Little did I know, military police and the Air Force broke it up. So there's law enforcement function and security function. So the whole time I was there, I guarded missiles, and I deployed to Iraq with like a kind of a light infantry type unit. So I qualified on police, like handcuffing, stuff like that. Right. So I got out, and when I got out in 2008,
you're like, well, I possess the skills to do it.
Sounded great on a resume.
Right.
So I got out in 2008 when the recession hit, and I ended up cooking in a kitchen for like 8 months. Met a bunch of dudes that were cool, and they kept me pushing for it, and I got hired in 2010. I went through the academy then. So
now, how long was your academy?
Ours about 6 months long.
Okay. So that's
6 months.
They seem to run anywhere between like 20 weeks, which is like 5 months at the short end, to like some agencies have like 9 or 10 month academies.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some have
9 or
like
10. Really?
Yeah. There's some like in California. The only one that I know of is the California Highway Patrol. It's a live-in academy. So you go and you live there. I assume yours was not. They're kind of rare now, Nate.
We had the option if you're outside, because we're rural up here in northern Arizona. So if you're within, if you're within an hour, right at an hour, you have the option. But outside of that, you have to stay there. So my agency, they beeped out on me, and I had to drive. I was like right at 59 minutes. So every day was 2 hours. Awesome.
You're just trying to drive a little bit slower so that you can be like, no, it's been like over an hour each way.
Yeah, they didn't care. I was late, and that I got to wear my Flavor Flav clock for a while, the huge ass wall clock.
Oh,
that's
it's
amazing.
so nice to know that other academies do that still.
Oh, mine didn't.
Well, 12 years ago.
Yeah, no, but I mean, my academy. Oh my God, my academy would have been 20 years ago. My academy would have been 20 years ago. It was still, I mean, there were still moments where we screwed up really bad mid phase, and it was somewhat our own fault and somewhat just normal. Right around the mid phase, they want to remind you that you still have a lot to learn. So halfway through, they're just going to spank you hard. Well, we unfortunately made a couple of boo-boos, one right after the other, in the week leading up to our mid phase. And so our mid phase was pretty brutal. It was, quote, march them out behind the buses where the college can't see and unfuck them.
Dude.
Did it work?
Oh, yeah, it worked. I mean, it was nothing like polishing your leather gear because you had chewed it up the day before on the asphalt doing sit-ups where in full black leather gear.
I think that's a trend in the military and in policing, in the academies, because in the Marine Corps, it always happens when you go to the range, when it's range week, you fuck up on purpose. They make you fuck up on purpose. No matter what you do, you can't do it right. And they treat you like a baby and they fuck you up. And then you finish the range week and you go back and everything's great. And you're like, this is crazy. And then when you're in law enforcement, about that middle phase, they're going to either throw you back. They're going to take you out of your uniform, throw you back into a suit, make you feel stupid, make you walk around like a dummy. I think it's just to check you so you don't get a big head, and to keep you on point and on the ball.
Yeah,
I think I've seen this trend everywhere.
Oh yeah, it's a trend.
That's exactly how it was.
We
for us.
did a little bit extra to earn it, so it was the same for you. That's good to hear, Nate, because this is rural Arizona. You're saying,
yeah. On the other side too, though, the Air Force is really hard. I use my salad fork instead of my dinner fork, and it was napkin wasn't in my lap.
Support off your chair.
Yeah, shit was ugly, man. It was a bad day.
You had to do another couple of reps on the Peloton.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No ice cream tonight, only Jell-O.
Never again.
You learned your lesson though. They learned you good.
Yeah, I did. Oh yeah.
You know what though? Like I don't know why. I mean, if you think about it, something deep within all of us should be. It's like the fire versus police thing. When you get on a fireman about, you get to sleep for a living, you get paid to sleep, and you get paid to eat, and you get to go to restaurants and have little old ladies worry that your meal's going to be cold if you get called to a call, and yet we're the dumb ones that got in the line for the police academy instead of the fire academy. It's the same thing with the Air Force, man. If you got a sweeter ride at the Air Force, I mean, I don't blame guys for going Air Force.
I'll do you one good too. So I was my original agency after I was with them for 2 years, and there's some issues, and I ended up walking away, and I moved out to Ohio, went to the fire academy, became a firefighter, and my mentor from Sedona called me and said, "Hey man, if you still want it," and my dumb ass packed up and moved back there. so
what you know, what that tells you where your love was, right? Your passion was for law enforcement, right? So you ended up, you got out of the Air Force, went into the academy. You were sponsored during the academy, or did you get picked up after?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to be sponsored here.
Okay. So you're going through the academy, you have an agency, 6 months. Now, how long is your FTO program? How long are you on probation? Those kinds of things.
Probation's a year from when you get out of the academy. FTO, I want to say it was a 9-week FTO, and then the second time was a 10-week FTO.
Yeah.
So that's fairly standard. I don't know what it is for you guys.
So well, for us, for our agency, well, when I got hired, they had put a state requirement for training time. So I was one of the first trainees to have to go through a specific like hour requirement. They could not release me earlier than 16 weeks or something like that, 12 weeks. I can't remember, but there was a specific number, and it hadn't been that. It had been like up to the discretion of the field training sergeant up to that point. And now it was like, no, thou shalt not let them out on their own and take the training wheels off prior to this amount of time on the job. So that was like for my agency.
For mine,
the
agency that I work for, 24 weeks, FTO, and it's 3 different FTOs. And it's technically, 26. I think it's 24, right?
Yeah.
It's technically 2 weeks longer because the first 2 weeks are like break in, like
orientation.
Right, this is you kind of they allow you to fuck up and to see where you fucking up, and they really go hands on, like first, like with like reports and stuff like that, and teach you kind of how to do it because the academy doesn't teach you a really good job. So basically, it's 3 months of that with 6 months of FTO with different FTOs, and then the last 6 months, because it's a year of probation, is with either by yourself or with a partner. Generally, it's with a senior police officer who's been doing this a lot longer than you have, and then or with other training officers if they have the bodies, which they generally don't. So you work with other patrol officers who have a little bit more experience than you, and then you go out. But when I was going through, they're like, all right, probationers, you get to partner up today. And we're like, what the fuck? Okay. Crazy. They don't do that anymore.
Which is crazy. No. It's crazy for us because, I mean, you guys will, bigger agencies, you'll see more in, a year at times than some guys up here will see in a whole career. So we get our phase and we have to talk about, well, hypothetically, if this happens, what do you do? And then when they cut you loose, you may, my first year, it was me and like guys that were as new as I was, and the sergeant goes home. We're like, what the hell do we do? No, it's interesting up here.
Yeah, you feel like the inmates running the asylum at some points. I will say that I was in a city police department, but it was in a more rural area of the county. So we had the most square miles of any city in the county, but we had the only the 4th highest population density. So we had a lot of land and a lot of cows. But I can tell you that for us, we would end up getting things not quite as often as a big city agency, but we'd get them more often than, say, sometimes the county guys would. But there's less people to deal with it. So you're expected to handle all of it. Like there's no give up. Like you're handling it from start to finish. And
burglaries, frauds, all the everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So it's a bit of a different animal. And I feel like in some ways there's like, I kind of understand how cities could be broken up and have departments because they're so big where they have people that just function as detectives. And you're like, yeah, this person is a detective. They can write search warrants. They can do book work. They can do this, that, and they're the house mouse. And that person would be like, yes, I'm happy to do that. Because guess what? if you asked them to put on a uniform and a badge and told them to go out and crush crime and suppress evil on patrol, they'd shit a brick. They would do what they knew how to do 10, 15 years ago. Right. Exactly. But at the same time, there's other guys that can go out and hump, man. They can work patrol. They can take those calls. They're good in a fight. They're tactically sound, but you get on them an investigation and they're just dog shit. But what's interesting about a bigger agency is you can hide those people according to their strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, I can attest for the fact that I would have to work cases with a guy and he was clearly not cut out to work fucking cases. I worked plenty of times patrol, and I'm sure Nate can attest to this, with somebody who clearly is not cut out for work and patrol, whether it's your own agency or an agency that's there to back you up. So anyway.
Oh yeah. You see some stuff and you're just, it's painful at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Nate, after time in the Air Force and now time in rural Arizona as a law enforcement officer, can you say if you're a police officer or a sheriff's deputy, or
I am a police officer, and I forget which one of you said it, but I'm a base coach. About 2 years ago, I promoted up to sergeant.
Okay. Yeah. Base coach. That's right. For those of you who don't remember, base coach, a sergeant is a base coach. He's wearing the uniform and he's on the field, but he's not actually playing the game. Just so you know.
Yep. Tell some people what to do, and there you go.
It's a good job to have. I know guys that hated it, but it's a good job to have.
That's what makes a good supervisor. They're not micromanaging their officers, right? And they're not what we call it P4ing or whatever. Like you're like training officer plussing it, I guess would be a better word to say, because that would make more sense to people. You're not training officer plussing it because you're a supervisor and you're supervising everybody, and you're giving your officers and your training officers that ability to do their job and handle the scenes. And you're just there for one, advice and support. And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and for us, so we've got like three. So we'll have 3 officers and myself will be on. So depending on the night, if it does get busy, I end up having to just jump in the mix and take and check calls with everybody else and go. So there's times where it just, whatever, just go wherever I'm needed, do whatever I need to do. And
yeah, I'll say that's a little bit more like my agency, where if the WC had to jump out there and shag calls, they would absolutely do it. Oh yeah, 100%. They would go absolutely out there. Time for another episode, another time, story for another time. The first time I almost dumped a guy. I was right off of probation and I was next to the lieutenant. And the lieutenant had rolled in his take home plane wrap car. So he was the patrol lieutenant, wore a uniform to work every day as the patrol lieutenant, but he had a plane wrap take home car. And we had this man with a gun call and he rolled to it. And I was the first on scene to back him up. And so here I am I'm the youngest guy on the department at that point and the least experienced guy with this former LAPD patrol lieutenant who's worked Southwest, and he's just this grizzled veteran. And he's like, he doesn't have half his shit. He's got like a gun and handcuffs on his belt, Anyway, that's the story for another time. But if you got to do it at smaller agencies, you're still going to have to go do it. I once backed the chief up on a traffic stop.
What?
Yeah.
He actually, what?
Damn, yeah. Some small agency shenanigans right there.
No, he was coming into work and it saw something that upset him. He made the stop.
We got our chief. He came from a bigger agency in California, and he got here and was like 2 months on, and he gets on the radio and he arrests somebody. And we're like, what the hell? So we got him a pink handcuffs all on a plaque and everything. He was the first chief to ever arrest somebody for our agency.
What agency was he from?
He was from Sacramento.
Okay. Oh, well, that's why Sacramento hooks and books, man. Like Sacramento.
Yeah, he got down for a lot.
I'll bet. Well, the floor is yours, Nate. We appreciate you coming on, and I love hearing guys that are outside of California and in different agencies and stuff, hearing what they bring to the table. It's always so much fun. So the floor is yours, man. What's your story?
Awesome. Yeah. So my story, it kind of touches on some of the stuff we were just talking about. brand new, being with another person that was like, he had like 5 or 6 months more on than me, and dealing with some rural issues. So it was, my buddy and I, so we're on patrol. It was the two of us that day. So we had the whole city. It's about 10,000 people in town, and then there's a neighboring, 10,000. So it's the two of us. And it was just one of those days where, like you get that feeling like it's in the air, like just, it's a funky day.
Right.
And the calls that are coming in. Yeah. So
you can so we were going dumpster fire in the air.
Must have been a full moon.
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. It was something. It was weird. I mean, it was a weird day, but so we were going call to call, and we were just busy, and we're, handling most of our stuff solo. And we took, took a suicide. A lady shot herself in the chest, and we had to go out in the field, find her, deal with that. And while we're dealing with that, and we get that wrapped up, as our, the one detective shows up, we get a hot tone to some guy who's in an ambulance just outside of town that was just losing it, and was fighting with our state troopers. So we had to, code 3, run over there, and it was, I don't know, 10-minute drive to get there. So we get there, and he's fighting, the ambulance is rocking. So my partner's going in, and as I'm getting ready to get out of my car, then the next call comes in, and it was, ladies making threats. She wanted to kill herself, stated that she's going to the Little League field or the bank, or not the bank, but the post office is right there, to go shoot people and get have us come shoot her.
Right.
And it was opening day for Little League, and she's probably, 3 blocks tops from the Little League field.
So it's a legit threat.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we'd been dealing with her before, and, so it comes out. And so I'm, screaming across town, trying to, get there, trying to get my rifle out. I've got like 9 months on. I'm like, oh shit, here we go.
Like really,
so I get on scene.
This is.
Oh yeah.
It's happening now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I was officially done with the day before that happened.
Right.
It's like shit story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like you're really. So anyway, go ahead.
Fuck.
So I get there, and thankfully the saving grace was one of my sergeants checked on shift like 30, 40 minutes early. Or didn't check on, but he heard it. So that was nice. So he gets there, and I get there, and I drive like right by her because I'm new. I don't know what I'm looking for, and like you just passed her. So I dump out of my car, and there she is, and it's walking to the sidewalk, and she's getting ready around the corner to go down to the Little League field. And there's small town baseball, those sports are huge here. And there's, if I had to guess, 1,000 to 1,500 people down there. So it's pretty packed. Yeah, it was pretty packed.
It's a place
and they're
to go.
and it's like in between games. So cars, yeah it is. It's, so there's a bunch of cars coming, going, and traffic's bad. So we got traffic kind of stopped now, and everybody's gawking, looking what's going on. And, there she was, and she's on the sidewalk. She got her cane. She got her hand on her 1911, and she's just, shoot me, kill me, shoot me.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And I got my rifle out.
And how old is she?
Yeah. She had to have been in her late 60s.
God damn.
There's more to it. There's more to it.
Go along.
So, oh yeah. So, I got my rifle out, and I'm standing there, and I'm just kind of like, oh God, if she takes her gun out, then this is what's going to happen. Like I've set my mind on it. I'm used to the military, deployed, so I wasn't uncomfortable, but now I'm in the police side, and there's people everywhere. Like my line of sight, my shot is like a sidewalk, and there's cars that are coming in and out behind it. It's not a good spot to be in where we're at. So we delay, and we're waiting. And we're trying to talk to her, and she's like, she's not giving it to us. Like saying her name. She's like, nope, I'm not telling you my full name. You're a civil servant. Your job is to serve the public, and I'm telling you to kill me. That's your job.
Oh God. She's very specific.
So it was one of those she was after about a minute, not 5 minutes, but about a minute or two, it's not, it was going to go that way. So some more officers showed up. I think by the end of it, there were, like 3 of us there. And I could hear on the radio, deputies from our county that we were in were, coming from, Seligman, Ashfork, kind of, which is 100 mile, hour and a half, hour maybe, if you're going code 3, 100 miles an hour the whole way.
Yeah.
So people were coming from everywhere, but it was going to be a while.
It was going to be a while.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So where the significance of the story is, that's not a super uncommon thing to deal with. I think, suicide by cop stuff. What got me was she was, going towards my sergeant, kind of like egging him on. She wasn't really going. And then she started walking towards me and, being new, like, what can I do? Like, all the questions going through my head. And there came a real distinct moment where I was like, I was afraid, like fear for my life. Like, this chick's legitimately going to pull this gun out and I'm going to tie with her at best. Right. And I was like, and I paused. I'm like, you dumbass. This is what they taught you in the academy. This is what everybody said. Like, I'm in fear for my life. Like, if she takes, and she was in a sidewalk square, and I was like, if she steps out of that square, I was going to end it. Cause she was about 22 feet away from me. So
right.
Close enough. I was uncomfortable. So the other, she forgot about me, because the other officers were kind of set up in an L on her, and we're just trying everything we can. And traffic's chaotic now. This has been going on for, I think we were there for like 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes. And it's just, at this point, it's packed in that area. And the great idea I had was, I'm going to bring a taser to a gunfight. Lessons learned.
Right.
And lessons learned. Yeah, because I'm like, something has to happen. We're just sitting here with this chick, and it's like we're all saying the same thing. We're talking in circles, and something has to happen. Somebody has to do something. So I pull my taser. Yeah. The other guys see it, and I get a good. I put my rifle down. I clap my taser off.
The taser thing, and if that's okay, I want to back up to something you said, because you had mentioned the moment you realized, dummy, I'm in fear for my life, right? Like that, you have this aha moment, like, oh, the moment you go, holy crap, this lady could kill me. You are in fact in fear for your life. You just had that realization that your life could end, right? So we're now in the lethal force conversation, right?
Yeah, it's deadly force option now.
Right, right. However, when you get to there comes a point where you start to do this mental math, and contrary to what the media likes to portray, cops have conscience. And when you start to realize that there also is a question where sometimes you have to ask yourself, okay, I probably have the justification to shoot her, but I really don't want to. And you are delaying as long as you possibly can. It sounds like that's kind of where you're at with this.
De-escalation.
No, I really wanted to shoot her because I was pissed off that she was going there to, kill people, and she was. Okay. It was you're there. Right. I'm still fresh out of the military, and I'm like, oh, like, you're going to kill people. It was that, drinking out of a fire hose for the 9 months. And I knew I had the other guys, they're all on the SWAT team and real tactical dudes, and so they had that cover. I'm like, I'm going to try something here, because she's just standing there now with her hand on her gun, and she's just, we're just yelling back and forth at each other, and it's just, we weren't going anywhere.
So what was the hesitation then? If you had the will, and you had did it just not click in your mind that she was good to go, or was it still just that fear of, I'm a new cop, I'm not quite sure what I should do?
I knew in that moment when it hit, when I had that realization, it was like, I knew I was good to go at that point. If she farted the wrong direction, I was going to shoot her. But she stopped. That was the thing is she stopped, dead near where she was at. And then her focus, like, in that moment, completely went away from me to talking to the other officers. So it maybe did feel like things that, like, okay, she's not encroaching on anybody anymore. She's not pushing it. And we're set up on her. So we're going to try what we can try. We're going to try to de-escalate.
Right. As, that's that. I don't. Okay. So there is a little bit of, I don't have to Like I could have, but I don't have to. So let this play out for a minute. There is some of that then.
Right.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So anyways, I let my taser off, and that's how I know she was like right at 22 feet. Cause, you know, how you see things in slow motion. I watched my taser prongs, perfect spread, would have been the taser shot of the century. But I watched the lines completely straighten out, just doink, and stopped right at where she was standing.
Oh.
So, and then I watched them bounce. I watched them bounce back, and the gig was up, man. She
25 feet 6 inches.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. But she looked at me, man, and the look that she gave me was one of the most like, how dare you try to take this from me? And at that moment, that I knew. So I dropped my taser, and I was bringing my rifle up to shoot her. Like I just right there, I was like, I'm shooting her. Like she talked to me through how she looked at me,
right?
Because I knew what was going to happen. And right as my sights were getting up on her to shoot, she tried to pull her gun out, and then one of the other officers in the street shot her. And she died right there. And there were so many lessons learned for me on that incident helped shape my career. I didn't have representation, so afterwards I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
I don't pay my dues. There was the hesitation that I had bringing a taser to a gunfight. Right. There was a lot. And, so that's, and I went into SWAT, and I defensive tactics instructor, twisty wristy stuff, as you'd say.
Yeah.
And, so it was a huge incident for me, to really think about and chew on it 9 months on. And the 1911 thing I say is, so they did CPR on her. We saw that. And, she had female stuff. And then the next day they told us that she had another gun and she didn't have female stuff below the belt. So she was in the process of going through a change. And then she just was never able to get it done. She kept getting cancer and got sick, and, was tired of life. So she had a very male approach to things. 1911 combat boots, the whole nine. And cause that was really weird that a 60-something-year-old lady is going to go out like that.
Okay. So that makes a lot more sense, because you're talking about, and we all know this, very male behaviors in law enforcement. For example, we've talked about, women typically don't shoot themselves in the face, right? Men do. We've talked about women they poison, they use pills, men hang, like there's different ways that people do violence. And it is a lot of there, contrary to what society wants you to believe, there is a difference between the two genders. So that is interesting now that you say that there's so many male behaviors exhibited by the suspect, only to find out that it's another lobster claw story.
Oh yeah. It was funny because we were like, no, you're wrong. I know what I saw. Yeah. it took us a bit, but yeah, it's not the, the sexiest, biggest story in the world. I've had some other stuff that's, more of like a war story, but I think that one was good because, being rural, there's so many things that we have to deal with fewer people, and the resources that, we don't have, it really makes it interesting. And, and I'm proud of that. I hang my hat on that. Like, I really am proud that I work for a small rural place, and, here's a sock, a cat, and some duct tape, go figure it out. And you're like,
yeah. Okay. And I will say that, coming from a smaller agency, I'll tag up on that as well, is that I know the bigger agency guys. And yeah, there was an element of like, I would love to go, play Rock'em Sock'em Robots. And I got to do that when I was loaned out, but at a smaller agency, there was this element of filling, being there to completion, being, present through all of it, but also knowing that, there was nobody coming. Like you have to make a decision. You have to be prepared to make that decision by yourself. They always tell you, never arrest anybody by yourself. And yet I know cops that have had to do it and are like, well, I wasn't going to stand there with my thumb at my ass for 15 minutes waiting for another officer because that's how far away they were. I just put the cuffs on her and hooked her up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you know, and they, and they know, and it's like everybody knows that what's going to happen. And yeah, but that's part of like what we're teaching now, like getting into de-escalation, doing it the right way, right. With us being safe about it and understanding that de-escalation isn't always like pretty, rah, the bad guy is alive or this person's good. I mean, it can get nasty, but it's about doing it safe. And if you can wait for a partner, be smart, even though we're rural. If you got to wait 5 minutes to go, wait 5 minutes. If you can, you can.
The one thing that I would say about de-escalation is people forget, especially in bigger agencies when they have more officers and things like that. And, you have, whether your supervisor's being scared or whatnot, people forget that de-escalation is 1, verbal, 2, different force options, starting with 1, pepper spray, if you can, baton, if taser, beanbag, or 40 millimeter foam baton rounds. And then lethal force is a part of de-escalation, because if all those other force options and de-escalation tactics fail and you are still met with that deadly force option and scenario and you have to take action, deadly force is part of de-escalation. And I see far too many supervisors saying, oh, well, de-escalation, we can't go hands-on. We can't go hands-on. No. Bullshit.
Oh,
you can. De-escalation is a set of formulated options that you have in your disposal in your tool belt to utilize
keep it
during
getting
conflict.
Worse.
Yeah. And if it
can always get worse.
Yep.
So at some point you have to decide this is where it stops and no further. This is it.
Yeah. When they put their say in,
I see far too many scenarios where you see cops basically talking for long periods of time with people, and they're losing ground. They're allowing the suspect to gain ground. Next thing you know, they're being chased by a suspect where they should never have been chased with a deadly weapon. It's happened in California numerous of times. It's been captured on camera, where you see coppers who, maybe it's the supervision, maybe it's the coppers that are afraid to take action, where they end up allowing the suspect to run the situation and the scenario, and it ends up leading to a deadly force scenario. And it was already a deadly force option to begin with, but because of people are afraid, because they're afraid of the deadly force aspect of de-escalation or the hands-on approach or the I'm about to have a major use of force, they're afraid to take action. And you see far too many times where officers put themselves in bad situations because they're like, well, I got to de-escalate. I have to talk it to death. No. You have to talk to a point, and then you have to start taking action. And if that action fails, you move to the next force option. If that one fails and you're left with the ultimate scenario where you're like, fuck, I have to take someone's life. Well, that's part of it. And you have to be willing to do that to save lives, to save the public, to save yourself and other officers. And I see that mistake being far too often.
Yeah, and that's huge in what I teach or what we're adopting. And one of the things that I heard that really shifted, like de-escalation, it's for people, you know what I mean? And that can shift. And if a bad guy has a hostage, and he's getting ready to kill her, you're de-escalating that for her, not him. And that the only option you may have is to shoot that person. Yeah, like you said, that's de-escalation, and people don't wrap their head around it sometimes. But it's tough. But I'll do it for the rest of my career because of what I learned. And if some dude or some gal who's 9 months on doesn't have to make the same mistakes I did or have to wonder about that, that's keep doing it.
There's an element of use of force that there's a different trigger that you have to be willing to pull. And I used to talk about this with defensive tactics, but if you know when it's time to talk and when it's time to not talk, like there's a very definite line, and it comes from sizing people up. It comes from learning how, people used to joke around that I was Teflon and that, because I never got complaints, and it was, if they did, they could never stick to me. And I would say that's because you have to know who you can motherfuck and get away with it, right? You really have to know people.
Yeah.
And if you know people all day long, you'll know I can talk to this guy and I eventually can talk him into cuffs. And then you look at the very next guy and you're like, it doesn't matter how long I talk, this guy is not going to go willingly. So in being able to make those decisions early on, being able to size people up like that, you'll know that the de-escalation of force means with the second guy who is not going to go under any circumstances, you're going to snatch him up as fast as you can before he even has a chance to start chatting and getting hyper and getting upset about the fact that he knows now he's going to jail. You're just going to be like, hey, turn around, put your hands behind your back and snatch him up, knowing that the second he makes the connection that he's going to jail, it's on like Donkey Kong. But then there's other people where you're like, if I snatch this dude up like that, he's going to freak out and he's going to, what the hell? And it's going to be a fight. Whereas if I just explain it to him, he'll go with the program. And if you can't make those judgment calls, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Sometimes it's painful and to watch, but and that's for like, as a profession where sometimes it was hard. One of the reasons I walked away is, if you watched me, like you're Teflon, you can talk, certain guys into handcuffs or not, but you watch me doing it and I'm screwing up by the numbers. People had this attitude of just like, well, I'm going to sit here because it's not my call, or I'm not going to get, they don't want to be a part of something that's going bad and they just let it happen. And that bugged me that cops won't sometimes step up and be like, no, dude, like, hey, and step in. It just,
well, look at that. What was that call?
Tough.
What it just happened in, where the female officer stepped in and the sergeant choked her out when she was stepping in on how he was handling with this other suspect. The suspect was already cuffed and the sergeant steps in like he's going to pepper spray him with cuffs on. And the girl was following whatever that state training was, which is the duty to intervene. They now, as police officers, if they see what they perceive as excessive force, they are required by law to intervene. So she stepped in and grabbed this sergeant's belt, and the sergeant turned around and C-clamped her on the throat.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I saw that. I think it was
in
Texas.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's out there. But here's the thing. Like I've seen women handcuffed in the backseat of a police car get punched in the face by a man. And I had no problems with it. None whatsoever. Because of the circumstances that were surrounding it. When you're being bitten, you can do whatever you want to the person that has your flesh in their teeth to get them to open their mouth. And if that's punching a woman, you can punch that woman. I have no problems with that. But there's other times where I've seen things and I'm like, bro, here, let me show you how you can gain compliance a different way next time. Because you didn't need to go through all that nonsense. You didn't need to do all that mess. Like, here's the point where you lost your audience and they decided they were going to go sideways on you.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you walk up and you see it and you just cover your mouth. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen suspects, handcuffed suspects, headbutt officers in the back of a station. Heard of stories where handcuffed suspects were walking to the car and used the car as leverage and fell back on the officers, busting the officer's elbow, causing that officer to have multiple surgeries on that elbow and take them out of the fight. There's been time. Okay, so it's not uncommon, and it's a very well-known practice in prison that when you're in prison for a long extended period of time and you're a career criminal, you learn techniques and tactics against cops, especially with being handcuffed. That's where they develop the Folsom Roll from Folsom Prison, where, I'm going to put my hands like this on top of the fucking car and you're going to search me. And then they roll on you. And the next thing you know, they have your arm. Or they learn techniques when they're handcuffed to grab your belt and take you to the ground and start fighting with you and trying to get your gun. They've learned how to disarm officers by, going through triple retention holsters and things like that, and single retention holsters. It's not uncommon for suspects to learn how to fight handcuffed. So if you're handcuffed, doesn't mean that threat is over. It means you have to carefully watch that suspect, and you have to watch your hand placement where you're not you're not holding the cuffs in between each other, because they can twist and you can pinch your fingers. And they can, take flesh, they can grab your hands, and next thing you know, you're in a fight, and you're in a fight for your life because there's a gun involved and it's your gun. And so it's not uncommon for suspects to learn techniques to disarm cops and to do it when they're handcuffed. So it's just like, when you see cops, fighting a handcuffed suspect, people are like, "Ooh, that's excessive." Like, no, it's not, unless they're unconscious and they're just being beat for no fucking reason.
Yeah, unless you know like what's going on and what the context is, it's really hard. Yeah. I mean, Chuck and I have a thread on the locker room, and we will share videos with our friends from the Locker Room podcast, Matt and Marco, and we will look at the videos together. Matt will send us videos and be like, "Hey, like, is this like what is it?" And I'll say there was one recently where I'm like, well, it may have been lawful and legal and clean, but it certainly doesn't make us look good as a profession.
Well, I know one.
And it doesn't matter. But my point is that like I can look at an incident and say, yes, that is a way that is lawful and you can handle it that way. That's just not, I mean, there's a lot better ways to handle these kinds of things. And unfortunately, a lot of that is about training. A lot of that is about working with your partners. A lot of that is about advancing, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu cops that go out and train BJJ. Cops that go out and take a martial art, whether it's BJJ or not. I don't want to, fall into the church of BJJ, but I learned that was part of what I learned and what I taught. Yeah. See, and that's the thing. Like I understand that because of what I was taught and because of the way I was an instructor, included elements from everything, including BJJ. All of that stuff integrates into making you a better officer, because an officer that can handle any situation, like he knows, okay, I've made the decision that I know if this guy pulls a knife on me, number one, I'm going to get cut and I'm okay with it. Number two, I know how to take the knife away from him and come away with maybe a superficial slash on my arm. And then number three, if I have to bury it in him, I can do that. Right. That guy's going to have inherently more confidence in his game when he talks to suspects than some kid who all he's learned is the couple of twist locks and joint manipulations and maybe some of the wristy twisty pugilisty stuff at the academy, but he maybe never had a fight in his life. Yeah. Maybe she's never been punched in the face. Maybe they've never rolled on the ground with somebody in a wrestling match and like felt what it feels like to be out of breath and scared you're going to die.
We basically taught them just enough to get their asses kicked.
Right.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a fucking guy and I know a little bit about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Krav Maga and boxing. Especially from the time that I learned in the Marine Corps, and then all of the dumb times that we decided to fight black belts who were instructors, which was fun. And get our ass kicked. But you learn so much from getting your ass beat by a fucking black belt or a triple black belt or a double black belt in that martial arts, because you take so much away from that, because you're like, okay, I can't do that. This is what's going to happen. That's the counter. And you learn that stuff. And I had a fucking use of force where if it wasn't for me knowing what I knew how to do and the techniques that I knew, I would have been really fucked up. And the guy tried biting my fucking arm. And long story short, he ended up with a broken orbital bone and a big ass slash mark over his face. And I thought his arm broke, but apparently it didn't, because he's like Gumby. He's a meth head. But if it wasn't for the techniques I learned from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it would have been a lot longer fight. And there's only two of us. And our help was, minutes and minutes and minutes away. I mean, that fight went on for 4 minutes. And then finally, when he's in cuffs, that's when you start hearing the sirens and you're like, fuck. And he was in cuffs and he bleeding all over the place. But if it wasn't for the techniques that I had learned, it would have been a lot different fight and a lot different momentum, and momentum towards him, not towards us. And, I just think that honing your skills outside of what the academy teaches you, because look, if you've never been punched in the face, you might want to go get in some martial arts and get punched in the face, because you don't want your first time being out on the street and getting rocked, because you're not going to know what it feels like. And you're going to be, your life's going to be in danger.
Find out then.
Partners. Yeah. And it's not a good position to be in, because it does not feel good.
That's I'll say this for some of our background requirements is that sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot during backgrounds when we take people with what arguably has a background that could make them a better police officer and we disqualify them. There are people I think that have proven themselves to have done maybe questionable things in their youth, but have turned their life around, that those young, dumb things, running from the cops, rolling with the wrong crew, maybe smoking a joint when they were a teenager, they have a little bit of life experience and they understand the world. I mean, let's face it. Wyatt Earp was not a good man, so to speak.
No.
He's not what you would call a nice guy. So anyway,
he was a pillar. That man was a saint.
That's right. Never did anything wrong.
Patrick Swayze, man.
Yeah, right. So
that's my man.
So let me go back to your call with, I guess the 1911 tranny. You said at 9 months on, you learned more from this than a lot of other calls you'd been on. Now, what would you say is your biggest, or was with 9 months on, you learned from that call? What did you walk away going, holy shit?
If you think you're ready, you're not. That was the biggest thing. If you think you're ready, you think you got it figured out, you flat the fuck out don't. And right. If you don't prepare, train, and aggressively go after, learning, being proficient, doing those things, then you'll never be ready. Because all we really do is just try to bridge the gap from here to there. And that was the biggest thing, was I thought I was ready. And there were a lot of unanswered questions in my head that I had to answer real quick. And, if I can help other people not have to go through that, or at least shorten that gap up for them, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway, because, I mean, anybody that's listened to this podcast long enough has known that we say, have a plan, then have a backup plan, and then have another plan, because your backup plan is probably not going to work either,
Right. And then if all else fails,
right. Exactly.
Yeah. I got to grab a charger real quick.
No, that's fine. I think that that's probably a great takeaway. There's probably a lot that you probably learned about, like dispatch, when they tell you something, when they send you to something, assumptions, because let's face it, they sent you to a woman. So there's the first mistake. But, I mean, there's all these different things and you're going, what the hell is happening? It just, every step of the way, it appeared to be, something. Your taser, you thought your taser was going to work. Taser's not going to work. You thought this was a woman, it was a man. Behavior is different. The all these things are different. So I'm sure for somebody having 9 months on, that really does teach you. You don't know what you don't know until you know you don't know it, very fast.
Yeah. And that's rural that's the challenge of rural, is there's a lot of things, I mean, that I think I know and in my mind, but I had a new officer, well, not new, like 2 or 3 years on from a, big shitty part of Phoenix. And he came up here and I had a call, and as a supervisor, I'm like, hey buddy, how many times have you dealt with this? A massive shooting or something. And, in a populated, resort. And he's like, not a lot, but I've dealt with it in the hood like every other week. So I let him take it over. It just,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do at that? Like, just the job changes every day.
You can't have it.
Right. The job changes every day. The minute you think you've got it mastered, it's going to flip you. Right. The minute you think it's, I remember doing shit where I go back and I look at and I go, oh my God, I cannot believe I did that. There's going to be moments where you're going to go, I'm lucky to be alive. That was dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are there too. But
what's funny is that when we do follow-on training with their academy, and then they send you down to the academy, and they're like, hey, you got to do some follow-on training, some defensive tactics, hands-on shit, some scenarios, and you're down there for a whole day. And you're dealing with cops who have been working in fast-paced divisions or areas, and they've gone and done with a lot of shit. And then you have other cops that have really been working more like sleepy areas that they can speed up, but they generally stay kind of slow. And then they give you a scenario where you're like, you have to take action, and you have a cop who's like, hey man, you try and de-escalate, and you get close enough. And next thing you know, you go hands on with the fucking instructor, and the instructor's like, whoa, this is not supposed to happen. I'm like, yeah, but it works, right? And you take that person to custody, you're like,
exactly.
And they're like, what?
Dude, yeah.
But that's not how the scenario is supposed to go. You're like, I don't give a fuck. That's how it went.
Yeah.
I love that. I fucking love when my officers, when I put a bulletproof scenario together and some dude walks in and just does something that's so outside the box and just smacks my head. I mean, whatever. I love that. Like,
because it means they're thinking.
Yeah.
It means they're thinking.
Yeah, that's I love that.
I always see coppers and they give them like these fucking scenarios and they follow them all throughout like the fucking streets, and they're walking through cars and shit. And it's all like a fake scenario. And then they're like, all right, let me get the next group of officers. And they end up getting them in custody, but like way down the fucking road. They like put themselves in harm's way and shit. And then you're like, hey, come here, let me talk to you. And you've already got your shit in your head, and you're like, all right, I know I can go hands on. And you just walk up and swoop that dude up real quick, or that female up real quick. And they're like, what do you mean? And then you articulate it, and they're like, oh shit, we didn't even think of that. But yeah, it's because we've been working on the streets, and you've been in here, and textbook, and we know real people.
Well, I will tell you that in my academy class, we had an instructor that would start every class, because he would teach a block. And every time he would have his first block with us, or every class that he would have his first block with, he would start by showing a clip from Raising Arizona, right? And it's the liquor store robbery at the beginning of Raising Arizona. For those of you who haven't seen it, go see it. And he would give a prize out to the student who could tally up the most violations. And the reason the guy was teaching legal codes. So he would give a prize out to the student who could come up with the most violations in the 2.5 minute sequence of the movie. And I remember the year I was in there, this girl beat the guy because she had one more than he did. And he goes, what'd you get? And we went through the list, and everybody went, yeah, how'd you get another one? And she goes, the baby's car seat wasn't buckled in properly. And we were like, oh, fuck.
That's fucking awesome.
And but it was one of those things where everybody in the class, even the instructor, had seen it from one way for so long. And then this gal comes in and just points out that the car seat wasn't done properly and fucks everybody up. So if you're not learning, if you're not looking for another angle, if you're not trying to find another way to skin a cat, that is the whole job. Like, that's like, shit, how do I fix this? So
shit'll buff.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, Nate, I appreciate you coming on and sharing that. I really like stories that are about things that really stick with you for the rest of your career. Those always seem to resonate with people the most because they either have had something like that happen to them, or it causes them to understand something that is going to happen to them a lot easier down the road.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and like you said, make your own mistakes.
Real fast. Sticks with you for forever. I had a handcuffed gal, stuff her hand in her pants, transporting her, and I stopped and like, get your hand out of your pants. And all she says is, it relaxes me. What? I had to watch this girl. Masturbate in the back of my car for 45 minutes to the jail.
What the fuck?
And then and then I went back and watched. I arrested her like 2 weeks before that at night, and I was like, "Let me watch this shit." Turned on the night camera, and she did it both times, and it just relaxed her all the way to freaking jail. I was like,
"The fuck?
Who the fuck does that?" Yeah, I'll remember that forever.
Jesus.
Shit.
Oh, Jesus, Nate.
Well,
we thank you for coming on and sharing.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Now, Chuck told me you have somebody on that note to dedicate your episode to.
Yeah, so, very fitting. So yeah, two people, buddy of mine, Justin Rivers and Sumner Cowan, two guys I served with when I was in the Air Force. Great dudes, really good. Some unfortunate things occurred, and both of them ended up taking their own lives at different periods. And they were two of the best guys I've ever known. Great friends. Went overseas with them, and we lose a lot of cops to suicide every year, and it gets overlooked. a lot, and you know, they were good dudes. They were good coppers. They were good soldiers, and so I really wanted to dedicate it to Justin and Sumner.
Well, rest easy, brothers. We've got it from there, and I will ring that bell till I'm blue in the face. We talk about, this is not a mental health podcast. This is not group therapy. This is, you know, us getting together and swapping fun stories and hoping that people will learn something about our professions. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we've come away with on a regular basis is that this job takes an emotional toll, and you need to reach out and get help from time to time. And as much as I get upset when we tell stories or do dedications where somebody died because they lost their life fighting a fire or intervening illegally or in a pursuit, the suicides bother me more because those are avoidable. And
it sucks.
I understand if you've lost your life in the line of duty, and that's awful, but to be able to avoid it, that's tragic. And so we should avoid it at all costs. So anyway, on that happy note, like we always end with, Nate, I really do appreciate you coming on. And I thought that it was a really, didn't see the twist coming at the end. No pun intended.
No, it was a pleasure. You guys have helped me out through a lot of stuff. I went through, some life-changing stuff a few years ago, and I just driving with my kids to Utah. I was looking at podcasts, and I was like, I'll try this one out. And it definitely is helped me in a big way. So I thank you guys for putting this out there, and
we appreciate
it's much appreciated. You're doing good work.
I appreciate it. I know Chuck does. John, he appreciated it. We're the locker room guys appreciate it because we do this, because we love it. It helps when we hear people say, this really got me through some tough times. So that's that. Yeah. When we hear, I can't tell you how many listeners have accidentally sent me a message that said, "Hey man, we really appreciate what you guys are doing." At just the moment where I was like, "Oh, do I really want to do this week?" And da 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 da. So,
brother, keep doing it, man, because I got to stay awake at 3 a.m.
Well, and I tell you guys, it's not our show. It's all of our show. It's not Chuck and I. It's all of us. So we appreciate you. Yeah. And hey, if I get to the point, I know some of you guys are asking about other podcasts. Chuck's got some stuff. I've got some stuff brewing where we're going to be able to have some other podcast guests from other social media outlets on. But hey, if we can get to a point where this podcast can pay the bills, I'll quit and do it, 5 days a week. I don't care. I'm putting that out there. I don't have a problem doing that. So anyway, all right, Chuck, do you have anything as we're closing out?
Yeah. Hey,
I know we got to give out that booking.warstories.
Yeah. booking.warstories@gmail.com. If you want to come on the show, you want to send me some stuff and we'll talk about it. If you do want to come on the show, you go to booking.warstories@gmail.com, go to Instagram, Facebook. If you forget, link is in the bio. But just send a quick blurb of the story that you want to tell, your history real quick. And if you'd rather talk over phone or just email, drop your cell phone number in there too. I can always give you a call. And then we can go through it like that. It's pretty painless. And then if you want to support us, go to our website is also the link in the bio on Facebook and Instagram, and that's warstories.com. And you can go there. You can get the Woobie hoodie. You can get our shirts, patches, stuff like that.
Warstoriesofficial.com. We still got the Woobie hoodies.
I will not be mailing anything this week.
No, I'm not
trying to touch any of the stuff. I'm not trying to touch anything until I'm 100% clear. I'm not touching any of the merchandise or anything like that.
Yep.
That way I keep it nice and clean. And then after I'm, done being, sick and stuff, I will not going to touch it for another couple days. That way to make sure that if there any germs are floating around anywhere, they are killed, because they can only live on the surface for 24 hours. So, if you have ordered something and I haven't shipped it yet, there is a reason. I'm not shipping anything. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just be a bit patient. Get on there though and support us.
But if you're tired of waiting and you just want to get it over and done with, I'm sure if you DM Chuck and beg him real nice, he'll mail you a package out with Rona all over it.
Yeah, dude, you get sick with me, dude. Hey, cool.
All right. Well, until our next episode, come home with your shield or honor.